The autumn wind howled through the barren trees surrounding the ancient stone mansion, its turrets piercing the gray sky like silent sentinels. Inside, Anna stood in the drawing room, her hands trembling as she folded a silk scarf into her suitcase. The room was a sanctuary of memories, polished oak floors, shelves lined with leather-bound books, a cracked mirror on the wall reflecting the dim light of a chandelier, a relic of their happier days. But today it felt like a cage. David, her husband of 8 years, had been slipping away from her, his presence as fleeting as the fading light outside. For weeks, she'd noticed the signs. His late nights at the publishing house, the way he'd angle his phone away from her, the faint scent of jasmine lingering on his collar. Small things, but they piled up like storm clouds, heavy with the threat of betrayal. Tomorrow, Anna would leave for a 6-month business trip to Paris, a critical opportunity to negotiate publishing deals for her agency. But tonight, her heart was a tangle of fear and doubt. Could David be trusted to stay faithful while she was an ocean away? Their marriage had once been a tapestry of joy. Anna closed her eyes, remembering their first winter in this house. They'd sat by the fireplace, David reading her favorite poems, his voice warm and steady as he traced circles on her palm. "I'll love you always," he'd whispered, his breath tickling her ear. They danced in the moonlit garden, their laughter echoing through the frost-covered hedges, their breath visible in the cold air. Now, those moments felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by suspicion. Anna's mind replayed every anomaly. A missed call he'd dismissed, a locked drawer in his study, a receipt for a dinner she hadn't attended. Was there another woman? The thought was a dagger, twisting deeper with every unanswered question, carving a hollow space in her chest. She couldn't leave without knowing the truth. It would haunt her every moment in Paris, turning her dream into a nightmare. Desperate, Anna turned to Sarah, their housekeeper, who'd been with them since the beginning. Sarah was quiet, her movements graceful as she dusted the mansion's endless rooms, but her eyes held a kindness Anna trusted. That morning, in the kitchen, Anna had poured out her fears over a pot of chamomile tea, the steam rising between them like a fragile barrier. "I'm scared, Sarah," she'd confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "David's been different. I need to know if he'll stay true while I'm gone." Sarah's brow furrowed, her hands pausing on the teapot. "How can I help, ma'am?" she'd asked. Anna hesitated, then spoke, her words heavy with shame. "When I leave, stay close to him. To him, friendly. See if he gives in to temptation." Sarah's eyes widened, her lips parting in surprise. "That's a heavy thing to ask," she'd said, her voice low. But Anna's pleading gaze held her. "Please, Sarah. I can't leave with this doubt eating me alive." Sarah nodded slowly, though her heart ached with the weight of the task. She'd once trusted a man who'd broken her years ago in a small village far from here, leaving her with scars that never fully healed. Now, she was being asked to break another's trust. But Anna's desperate eyes lingered in her mind, and her loyalty to the woman who'd always been kind to her won out, even as guilt gnawed at her. The next morning, Anna stood at the mansion's entrance, her suitcase a weight at her side. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet leaves and distant sea salt. David emerged from the study, his dark hair tousled, his smile faint but warm. "You'll do amazing things in Paris," he said, pulling her into a brief hug. His arms felt familiar, but his eyes darted to the floor, avoiding hers. Was it guilt, or just the strain of her departure? Anna forced a smile, her lips trembling. "I'll miss you," she said, her voice tight. She walked to the car, the gravel crunching under her boots, and drove away, or so David believed. Instead of the airport, she checked into a small inn on the outskirts of town, where the walls were thin and the air smelled of damp pine. Her room overlooked a quiet meadow, the grass swaying in the wind, framed by a sky heavy with clouds. From there, she'd wait, her phone a fragile lifeline to Sarah's reports, her heart a battlefield of hope and dread. That evening, the mansion's master bedroom glowed softly under the chandelier's amber light. David sat on the edge of their bed, untying his shoes, his thoughts elsewhere. The room held traces of Anna, her perfume on the dresser, a sketchbook on the nightstand, but her absence was a void. Sarah knocked gently, her apron neatly tied, her voice hesitant as she stepped inside. "It's quiet without Anna," she said, her tone light but deliberate. "You must feel lonely." David looked up, his brow creasing. "I'm fine, Sarah," he replied, his voice steady. "She'll be back." Sarah lingered, her heart pounding with guilt, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed her apron. "You're so kind, David," she said, stepping closer, her voice softer now. "I've always admired you. Maybe we could spend some time together? Just the two of us?" Her words were a delicate lure, but each one felt like a betrayal, a wound she was inflicting on the man who'd never been anything but kind to her. David's face darkened, his hands stilling. "Sarah, that's wrong," he said, his voice sharp. "Anna's my wife. I love her. Don't ever suggest that again." His tone was unyielding, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Sarah's cheeks flushed, her hands twisting together. "I'm sorry," she stammered, retreating quickly. At the inn, Anna's phone buzzed with Sarah's call. "He didn't give in, ma'am," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with relief and shame. "He got upset, said he loves you." Anna exhaled, her body sagging against the wall. Relief flooded her, but it was tainted by guilt. She doubted the man who'd vowed to love her forever. The rain outside drummed against the window, a steady rhythm that echoed her turmoil as she stared at the meadow now shrouded in twilight. But doubt was a cruel companion, refusing to be silenced by a single test. It whispered that David might weaken with time, that his loyalty could falter. Anna's fingers hovered over her phone, then typed a message to Sarah, her hands trembling. "Try again tomorrow. Be bolder." She hated herself for sending it, but the fear of betrayal was stronger. The next day, the mansion felt colder, its halls heavy with tension. David sat in the dining room, sipping coffee, his thoughts far away. A portrait of him and Anna hung on the wall, painted during their first year here, their smiles frozen in a happier time. Sarah entered, carrying a tray of pastries, her smile hesitant. "Thought you might need a little comfort," she said, sitting across from him, too close. Anna's so far away, she said, leaning in. Don't you ever wonder what it'd be like, just you and me? We could keep it quiet. David slammed his cup down, coffee spilling over the edge. Sarah, stop this, he said, his voice trembling with anger. I told you I love Anna. This is crossing every line. His eyes flashed with hurt, a raw wound laid bare. Sarah shrank back, her confidence crumbling. I didn't mean to upset you, she stammered, fleeing the room. Anna, listening through a hidden call, felt her heart splinter. David was true, but her mistrust had wounded him. She stared out the inn's window, tears blurring the landscape, the meadow now a dark expanse under the stormy sky. Why couldn't she trust him? Why had she let fear drive her to this? That night, Anna couldn't stay away. The storm outside raged, rain lashing her car as she drove back to the mansion. Her coat was soaked as she slipped through the side door, her pulse roaring. Voices drifted from the parlor, Sarah's, low and persistent. David, I'm sorry for earlier, Sarah was saying. But Anna's away for months. We could be discreet. No one would know. Anna's blood ran cold, her hand trembling on the doorknob. David's reply was a roar. Discreet? Sarah, you've gone too far. I love Anna, and I won't betray her. Anna burst in, her voice raw. Enough! David spun around, his face pale. Anna? You're here? Sarah gasped, her hands clasped tightly. Ma'am, you told me to do this. Anna's eyes burned with tears. I told you to test him, Sarah, not to keep pushing after he proved himself. I stayed because I was terrified of losing him. She turned to David, her tears falling freely. I doubted you, David. I thought you'd break my heart. David crossed the room, his hands reaching for hers, but they stopped short. You thought I'd betray you? His words were quiet, heavy with pain. Anna, you're everything to me. But this cuts deeper than you know. Sarah backed away, mumbling apologies, and slipped out, her guilt a weight she could no longer bear. Anna sank onto the sofa, her tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I let fear tear us apart. David sat beside her, his hand brushing hers, but the warmth was strained. Not apart, he said softly. Just broken. The rain slowed outside, its rhythm a faint pulse. They stayed there, two figures in a dim room, grappling with the wreckage of their trust. The mansion, once their sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum, holding the ghosts of what they'd been. Weeks turned to months, and the air in the house remained heavy, a quiet ache in every corner. Sarah found work in another town, her departure a silent relief, though her absence left a void. Anna postponed Paris, unable to leave with things so fragile. She and David moved carefully, like strangers relearning each other. Some days they walked the gardens, sharing stories of their early days. David would point to the roses they'd planted together, their branches bare now but still standing. Remember how we stayed up all night, trying to get them just right? He'd say, a faint smile on his lips. Anna would nod, her heart aching with nostalgia, but she saw the sadness in his eyes, a scar her doubt had left. Other days, they sat in silence, the weight of her mistrust lingering like a fog. Anna returned to her work, but her thoughts always drifted back to that stormy night. She began writing letters to David, letters she never sent, pouring out her regret, her love, her longing for the trust they'd lost. She'd sit by the window, watching the waves crash against the cliffs, their rhythm a mirror to her turmoil. David stayed by her side, his loyalty unwavering, but there was a distance now, a crack that words couldn't mend. One evening, David found a letter tucked inside Anna's desk drawer, its pages trembling with her handwriting. "I'm sorry for doubting you," it read. "I was so afraid of losing what we had." His throat tightened as he read, and that night he sat her down, his voice soft but firm. "We need to talk, Anna, not just sit in silence." The words opened a door between them, fragile but real. Anna's tears fell as she spoke, her voice raw with regret. "I let fear break us," she said. David listened, his hand finally holding hers, his touch a quiet promise. "We'll fix it," he whispered, "but we can't keep hiding." Winter crept in, the garden bare under snow. A rare sunny day arrived, the light streaming through the windows, casting a golden glow that felt out of place in their quiet sorrow. Anna began leaving notes on David's desk each morning, simple words like, "I'm trying," or "I love you," hoping to bridge the gap her doubt had carved. David started reading them aloud to her at night, his voice steady, a fragile bridge forming between them. One evening he brought home a collection of poems, the same one they'd read together years ago. They sat by the fireplace, his voice filling the room, the words a thread pulling them closer, though the sadness in his eyes never fully faded. Spring arrived, the snow melting to reveal green shoots in the garden. Anna and David began to find their way back, their steps small but steady. They planted new roses one afternoon, their fingers brushing in the soil, a silent vow to nurture what they'd nearly lost. Their marriage was a garden of its own, scarred but growing, its roots deep enough to weather the seasons, its blooms fragile but enduring.